I hope you guys see my screen, right? Good?
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to start this. So thanks, Yuki, for joining us. It's been, I think, Sandeep reached out to Yuki like probably 3 months ago. This is like the long planning into this whole thing. And finally, we are all here today. So happy to learn. I have no idea what this topic look like and all this stuff because I'm getting into this area. So I'm super excited to be hosting Yuki and learning from him. Um, don't want to go through this a lot, but I see there's a couple of new faces here. So my name is Pravinder Chana. I am in Vancouver and I run my own consulting company, which is pretty much focused on all things Power BI. Originally, now we all moved to Fabric kind of thing. So all merged together. So mainly, I kind of have a small team I have, which is like very focused on optimization and all that kind of stuff on the Power BI area. I have a YouTube channel called Power BI How To, where I'm a bit slowed down, not posting too many videos, but hopefully, I was working on a very exciting project for the last 6 months. It has actually finished yesterday, so I'm going to be sharing my learning from that project. So that's what who I am. But I let Sandeep is co-organizer with me, and I will let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Perv. And again, welcome everyone. I'm very excited to welcome Yuki to this presentation. So the last two sessions we had, so we had one by Miles, who is a principal PM on the Fabric team for Spark. And then we had one before that that was about how do you use notebooks. And Yuki, so I have known Yuki for I don't know many years now. He is a very active member of the Power BI community. So I've known him. He has written a book on polars, and so it was a natural extension that after notebooks, Spark, and now polars. I use polars and DuckDB like every day. So I wanted to learn from Yuki. He is known in the polars and the data engineering community a lot. So I will let him talk about and introduce himself and talk about what he does. But a bit about myself. I'm in the partner in crime with Perf, with this Vancouver and Fabric Power BI user group. I think we are into the first year, or we'll be reaching the first year of our user group. We're getting close to 1,000 members. The response has been amazing so far. So thank you everyone for that. And we look forward to doing this again, continue doing this in the upcoming months or so. We have another session planned on a similar topic in the next few months or so. So stay tuned more for that. And again, I would like to welcome Yuki. So thank you, Yuki, for taking the time to do that. And then
Thanks.
Pact, yeah. So Pact, Yuki has published a book that is, and the publisher is Pact. They have very graciously supported the community, supported our user group. Last month was actually the first month where we did this, where we did a raffle, where we picked one the participant from our session who got to choose one book, one of these books, and the book was shared with them for free, obviously. And we are very thankful to Pact for doing that and supporting our user group. So stay tuned, stay towards, but attend the entire session. And towards the end of this, keep an eye on one of these books, and just let us know if you're picked, whichever book you like, and we'll set you up with Pact to get the book.
Cool. Just before we hand over to Yuki, so we will record this in case you are not able to attend the full session. Of course, we would prefer you do attend, but we will record and share the link within a day or so. Please keep yourself muted during the presentation. And I will let Yuki tell how he wants to answer the questions. And if you want to put the question in the chat, just prefix with Q so that we know there's a question and we will ask Yuki. Yuki, from here onward, it's all yours. Take away. Thank you, everyone.
Alrighty, I'll take over the screen now. If I remember how to share it. Let me. Okay, looks like I have to get out and come back in. Sorry, guys.
No problem. Curious if we have anyone currently how many of you are currently, let's say, data engineers versus Power BI? Feel free to put it in the chat. And then how many of you are currently users of Polars, DuckDB, or any of the Python engines? Okay, cool. Nice.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, yeah, I can see your screen. Yes.
Perfect. Let me go back. So I'm gonna use the slides, starting the slides now. Can you see my slides just okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna be talking about using other tools other than Spark in Microsoft Fabric. I think Spark has been just the go-to tool for like, in any platform like Databricks, in EMR, in AWS, platforms like that, and in Fabric as well. Spark has a large ecosystem, a lot of tools around it being built and in a large community, stuff like that. But I want to showcase how using Polars, tools like Polars, DuckDB, DB, stuff like that can actually accelerate your pipelines even more. And this is just a simple agenda today. I want to introduce myself first and then giving a Spark overview and yada yada. And I'm going to go through my agenda here. And first of all, my name is Yuki Kakegawa, and I'm data BI analytics engineer, whatever you want to call me. I guess title doesn't really matter in the data world anymore. It's like I do from data ingestion, transformation to reporting. Creating dashboards, reports, things like that. So like I would call myself like a data guy, but if I have to give myself a title, it would be data engineer, BI engineer, or analytics engineer. Um, and my current company, I recently switched my company. I used to work at a company called Humana, which is a large health insurance healthcare company. And interestingly, Sandeep used to work at that company as well. And then he left and I filled his spot. So I guess data space is such a small world. But I recently left Humana like a month ago or so. And now I'm at a company called Jump AI. It's a SaaS company building AI software that automates financial advisors' workflows, where it automates like taking notes during meetings, updating CRM, things of that nature. And the company is located in Utah, and so I get to go into the office here and there while working primarily remotely, which is really nice. And I also have a company, my LLC, called RM Data, doing content creation, data consulting, things of that nature. And yeah, working with various companies, clients, people. It's been really interesting, and I've been learning a lot about working in data in general and working with businesses. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. And yeah, I like Sandeep said, I got to write a book on polars called Polars Cookbook, which is a book that contains practical recipes that you can use to learn polars to use in your project. And I'm also really active on LinkedIn, sharing data things and life in general. I think this applies to many of us, but like there are not many people around me or neighbors that work in data. So like I really enjoy being able to share my perspectives, like my career experience, things like that, online through folks on LinkedIn. And I have a few newsletters, one of them being the Data Toolkit, where I share like newer tools, like I'm going to talk about Polars, DuckDB, and also like SQL Mesh, which is a direct alternative to DBT. And so, yeah, I'm exploring newer tools, modern tools in that newsletter. So if you are interested, you can just check it out on my LinkedIn profile. And aside from work, I have a wife, and this picture only has one daughter, but I have another daughter now, which she is 7 months, 8 months old at this point. And so I'm a girl dad so far. It's really busy outside of work. And my wife and I love playing, watching baseball, softball. I played baseball through high school since fifth grade, and my wife played softball in college as well. And so we're pretty kind of hardcore players that enjoy watching and playing baseball, softball. And enough about me. Let's get into it. And some disclosure: my company Orem Data partners with DLT Hub, which is the company behind a library, open source library called DLT. DLT is a tool or a library that helps you develop Python scripts for data ingestion with ease. And DLT Hub also has their paid, I guess, cloud offerings. And I love DLT. I haven't used DLT Hub, the paid offering yet, but DLT library is a great library. So you can check it out. And MotherDuck is also my consulting partner. And Essentially, it's a competitor to companies like Fivetran, Airbytes, things of that companies. And I just help with them, share their products, I guess, content in general. So when I say consulting partners, that means if I get some companies use or subscribe to, let's say, DLT Hub's paid offering, cloud offering, then I get paid paid a commission. So that's what it means by consulting partner. Yeah, so that said, let's start off a Spark overview. As you know, Spark is like largely used in the industry. It's a distributed data processing engine, has many APIs in Python, SQL, R, Scala, tools like that, and a mature, stable ecosystem that Spark provides you. And over a decade of community, which is like huge. Like there's a lot of power users and people who have Spark expertise. And so it's really easy to get help online and from other experts. And scalable, of course, distributed computing, meaning your ETL jobs are run across many machines. So it's great for large, big data scale data processing. And like I said, community, and there's a lot of managed solutions in like each major cloud platform, like GCP, Azure, I guess Azure, no, yeah, I guess Microsoft Fabric and stuff like that. But and also GCP and AWS have similar products. So that's Spark. And so the question is, why not use Spark for everything? The answer is you can, but if you look at it, like it can be overkill for small and medium data. If you're just wrangling data, like wrangling data from a file that has like maybe not 5 big, or like 500 megabytes of data, you may not need Spark, right? And then Spark needs to, I guess, it takes time to start up, slow to start, slow to kind of iterate, depending on where you are. And it uses a lot of resource and could be expensive for small, medium data or workloads. So it may not make sense to use Spark for everything. And if you're okay with like all of these downsides, then you're good, right? You can use Spark for everything. And there's a consistent workflow. I don't have any, opposed opinions on that. But now we have, other tools that might be efficient than Spark, and one of them is Spark, Polars. So Polars is a library, data frame library like Spark, but this is written in Rust and has APIs or a wrapper in Python, R, SQL, and I think JavaScript as well. So there's a few tools that you can use Polars in, and it's designed to run on a single machine as opposed to using distributed computing framework like Spark. But Polars Cloud, so the Polars is developed by a person called Richie and other contributors, but he has a commercial company called Polars, I think, and they have a product called Polars Cloud, and it is built for distributed computing, distributed workloads. So that's a little bit kind of going onto a tangent, but if you're using open source Polars, just a Python library, then Polars is to run on a single machine. And one other advantage of Polars is the syntax is really consistent. So once you get used to it, it really makes sense to like you will be able to make sense of why certain things are built in the way they're built, if that makes sense. And next one is DuckDB. So DuckDB is a little bit different than Polars because it is not a data frame library, but it's as fast as Polars, and there's a library or a wrapper in Python, so you can use DuckDB in Python as well. And it is a analytical database. If you've used SQLite, which is an OLTP, but SQLite for analytics. And it's available in Python, R, Java, and other languages. And it even has a CLI tool, which is really cool. And like Polars, it's designed to run on a single machine, but supports out-of-memory processing, meaning if your machine only has like 16 gigs, but your file has like 30 gigs, you may be able to run it. I guess, yeah, DuckDB has that kind of feature. And the Polars has that as well, but they had some bugs that prevent this out-of-memory processing running not smoothly. But I think recently the Polars team fixed it, so you should be able to run out-of-memory processing capability in Polars as well. And another thing about DuckDB is that there's a company, like I said, MotherDuck is a company building a serverless DuckDB in the cloud. And DuckDB provides you a very flexible SQL syntax, so you're able to work with JSON semi-structured data, things like that, and very flexible, and it's really pleasant to use. Yes, yep. So that's about DuckDB. And there are other data frame libraries. I can't go through everything, but this is what I listed for this presentation. And one of them being IBIS. IBIS is a Python data frame library like Polars, but the design, or I guess the aim or purpose of this library is that so IBIS introduced a new, I guess, different syntax or API, if you say, like, Polars has its syntax, Pandas has its syntax, and IBIS has its syntax, but one big difference is that you'll be able to switch the backend engine that powers this library. So by default, IBIS uses DuckDB, which is really fast, but you can switch the backend to using like Polars and maybe other libraries. Pandas is not one of them because it's not fast, but like Modin, Spark, things like that. So it's kind of new, I guess, idea of having one single interface and be able to switch backends freely, which is really nice, right? In I guess in idea as the idea. A Daft, I think Sandeep has some experience with this one. It's a fast data engine, and it's really great for any modality, meaning like when we work with data, we typically work with like structured data, right? But like when we say modality, then we're talking about like pictures, images, audio files, stuff like that. So Daft is good at processing those kinds of data as well, not only structured data. And Daft also can run on a single machine or in a cluster of machines. I haven't experimented myself using Daft for distributed computing workloads, but as far as I've seen other people use, their blog write-ups, things like that, it seems really promising. So that's something interesting that you can check out. Another one, PeryTUS, it's a faster version of Pandas. They have the exact same syntax as Pandas, and you can just replace import, there's a line of code say like import Pandas as PD. You can just say import PeryTUS as yada yada yada, and then Pandas code just speeds up. It's really good, but this is not open source, so that's one downside of it. SQL frame like IBs, but with Spark syntax. So maybe you have all your pipelines defined as Spark, but you want to utilize, Polars, DuckDB, those engines. You might be able to use SQL frame to just switch the backend engine, keeping the Spark syntax. And so like IBs, you'll be able to have that flexibility. So all these data frame libraries are very promising, and I think it's worth checking them out. So going back to what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna do a demo, or show a demo where I run a pipeline with Polars, DuckDB, and Spark, and just benchmark the difference, the performance. But this is one of the benchmarks available online. I think this was from DuckDB, DuckDB Labs, and then using the machine with 16 cores, 32 gigabytes memory, and task is like joins, and this is half a gigabyte. And if you look at it, Polars, it takes 1 second to process, DuckDB 2 seconds. If you look at Spark, 17 seconds, right? So that's like a lot of improvement compared to Spark. So Polars, DuckDB are much faster for processing smaller amount of data. And there are many other, benchmarks available online, so you can probably just Google it and you see a bunch of them. Demo. So hope everything makes sense so far. And I'm gonna have the time for Q&A at the end of the session. But for now, let's go into the demo. Hopefully you're seeing my Fabric workspace. I have a simple lake house called demo, and an environment that has both Polars and DuckDB installed, and then there's a notebook that processes some data. So I'm using New York taxi trip data, ELO trip data from 2022. And yeah, and I have this shortcut from Amazon S3 buckets. So that's where the data is coming from. And yeah, let's go through it. So I have Polars, DuckDB, and Spark, and I've already run this beforehand. So I'm not gonna run this so that we can just keep everything short and sweet. But yeah, just reading in some. So in terms of data transformations, I'm applying in this pipeline are selection, filtering columns, aggregations, group aggregations, window functions, and rolling calculations. So simple to semi-complex transformation, I would say. And let's look through Polars first and see, maybe let's go through Spark because we're all familiar with Spark. So I have a function that has all of it. So reading a file, Parquet file, selecting columns like this. I like using method chaining as opposed to using pandas where you have transformation per line. I think method chaining makes it readable and this is kind of controversial, but digable, if that's the word. Sorry. So I have the selection, filtering, and aggregations, very simple. As well as group aggregations and some window functions, right? The dense rank, doing that. And yeah, defining the window and then applying all the transformations, and then also some simple join using some manually created data, and then writing the data back to a file in Lakehouse. So that's Spark, and let's go through polars. So polar syntax is different from pandas, but kind of similar to Spark in that it's really easy to chain methods one after another, which I really like about. And then so LF, why I do LF is because it's lazy frame, where pandas, every line of code will be executed, as the script gets run. But LF lazy, so polars utilizes, I guess both polars and DuckDB utilize lazy evaluation, where you define transformations, but then at the end of the script, when you tell it to execute, the engine, Polar's engine, DuckDB engine, and automatically applies optimizations on it. So which is very efficient, and Spark does that as well. But just to throw that out there. So in a lazy frame, I'm putting necessary columns and applying. Somebody has a question? Okay. Probably unmuted. But anyhow, so keep going. So aggregations, Polars uses something called expressions, which we can define by using PL, which is the shorthand, right? Import polars as PL. And then this is a column expression, and then applying some functions on it or methods. Yep. And the same things, specifying columns, applying aggregations. And then this is sorted version. And then window function is very easy. So choose a column, apply aggregation, and you use an over method or expression, and then just change the name. In the same, so rank. So you specify a column first, and then specify a method or expression. And then, so it's like you can apply transformations in order, which makes a lot more sense than in other ways. And then some rolling calculations. There's a lot of methods. I'm using rolling mean function there. Same thing over, right? So it's like partition by. And then same thing, creating that data frame manually and then joining them onto the original data frame. And then writing back to the file in the lakehouse. So that's that. I'm not gonna go through or going to like deeper into Polar syntax, but I think this is really easy to follow and organize. And one thing that's really good about Polar syntax is like if you want to do one thing and there is one obvious way to do it, whereas but like using pandas, like you have a million ways of doing a certain thing. And DuckDB, it's basically straight SQL. You connect to DuckDB engine like that. And then just define a SQL statement in the string. And then, yeah, you just keep doing that. And I'm sure like we all know SQL, so I'm just going to skip it all. And yeah, writing the data back to Lakehouse. And let's see the results. So this is the data size. If you look at this one, it's like 5 GB, which is not small, but not big at all. And you could use Spark for sure, right? Because that's what we use. But if you use Polars or DuckDB, sorry. So Polars for me in this environment, and I didn't change any settings of the cluster. So I think it's using something like 32 or 64 gigabytes of RAM or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but Spark took over 2 minutes to process this. Polars under 30 seconds. DuckDB it's like 37, so which is pretty close to Polars. So Polars was like 5 times faster than Spark. DuckDB was like 4 times faster than Spark. Which is really, pretty huge, right? If you have maybe 50 jobs like this, not using big data, then you might like be able to save a lot of money using these tools other than, Spark. Like I said, the downside might be, syntax and the learning curve, right? People might be familiar with Spark more than Polars or DuckDB and other tools. But utilizing some of the tools that I mentioned, like IBIS, SQL Frame, you might be able to overcome that learning curve a little bit easier. And yeah, and nowadays AI helps us learn at a much faster pace. So that's something that we can count on as well. So going back to the slides. So at the end of the day, when to use which tool depends on your team dynamics. Like I said, like some people, like if you're comfortable with SQL, DuckDB might be a good fit, but you can just use, Spark SQL. That works as well. And I guess in Microsoft Fabric, you can use T-SQL as well. In my personal opinion, if my team allows or my circumstances allow, then I would go with, using Polars DuckDB or maybe utilizing other tools, IBIS, SQL Frame, things like that, so that you can save, time and money in your pipelines. And you can still use Spark when only necessary when you're processing maybe like a terabytes of data, right? And which isn't likely, right? And the startup that I just started working at, I think, yeah, we have terabytes of data, but we're not processing terabytes of data a day. So like one job, nowhere near, terabytes of processing data. And so unless you're at a big enterprise, I don't think Spark might be good for everything. But that's my personal opinion. And like I said, AI really helps. If you have Spark existing pipelines, you may be able to use your AI to just convert from Spark to Polars, DuckDB, whatever you pick to choose going forward. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to showcase how Polars and DuckDB might be faster and some other tools might be, your option other than Spark. And yes, Q&A. Any questions from anybody?
Yeah, so we have few questions here. So first question is from, I hope I pronounced the name right, Kufre. What's the sequence involved in data pipeline development? So I guess the question is when you are using DuckDB or Polars, what is your pipeline development look like? I know you mentioned DLT Hub, but when you are in Fabric or maybe even outside of Fabric as well, how do you create your overall pipeline?
Yeah, so I would honestly opt to using DuckDB or Polars in transformation phase, where if you in data ingestion, I would use probably like ADF, right? In Fabric, that's probably easier. And you can use DLT when there's no built-in connectors in ADF, right? My current company, we use Airbytes for data ingestion. But yeah, if that answers your question.
So how does Airbyte? I'm just curious. How does Airbyte work? Is it a or do you Airbyte or is it Airflow?
Yeah, Airflow is an orchestrator, but Airbyte
Okay,
is an alternative to Fivetran, Stitch, and
I
those data
see. Got
ingestion
it.
tools.
Okay, okay, got it. So you use that to land the data in ADLS Gen 2 or let's say Fabric One Lake, and then from there, do you use Fabric much in your consulting work, Yuki?
Not much, but like people around me are starting to see more use cases using Fabric at like
Mhm.
many enterprise size businesses. And so
Okay,
we're seeing, I guess, increased number of clients or like companies that use Fabric.
got it. Got it. Okay. Next question is from Mehrdad that am I understanding DuckDB correctly? Is it a library? Can you show the code related to DuckDB one more time? So I guess his question is, can you explain DuckDB one more time? And then I guess ancillary to that would be there has been a duck lake. So we have so we've been using Delta, right? And Delta Iceberg, and now the DuckDB folks they've released another data format called Duck Lake. Yuki, any take on that? And then maybe for our attendees here, any compare and contrast you can do between the different data formats, and if it has any advantage, and how do you see that in your own practice?
Yeah, so DuckDB, it is a database, a very lightweight database for analytics, and you can use it in Python. So there's a Python library for DuckDB. So you can read Parquet, CSV, all those files, Delta even, in DuckDB in a Python script and run data processes and in DuckDB. And I think that answers your question about DuckDB. And when it comes to like Duck, like I think that's a really um I don't know many of you guys are into following the trends, but like Sandeep said, like we have Iceberg, Delta, and Duck Lake. But in my personal opinion, we'll have to see in the next 2 or 3 years, we're gonna see like how these will play out. And my guess is there will be a tool. I think there's already a tool that kind of unions these different formats into one, so like you can use them interchangeably, and that will hopefully that will apply to Duck Lake, so we won't need to like pick and choose, but we have like one of the formats and it can work interchangeably one after another, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, good. So just to add to that, Mirdad, so DuckDB, like Yuki said, it's a Python library. In Fabric, you have two different kernels. You have the PySpark kernel and you have the Python kernel. If you choose Python, DuckDB and Polars are both installed by default, so you don't have to do any installation. And when you're importing data, transforming the data, like what Yuki showed in his notebook, you can use that for data transformation, and then saving that data back to the lakehouse, either as a Parquet file, CSV file, or even as a Delta table. And when you save that to the Delta table, you can still use your direct lake on top of that, or you can use it in your SQL endpoint. So there is a full compatibility. And the reason being, again, Fabric and One Lake has adopted a Delta Lake as its standard or default format for storage format. So which is the beauty of Fabric, that you can use PySpark, you can use Polars, DAF, DuckDB, doesn't matter which engine you use. All the other Fabric engines will be able to read that data without any issues. And then to again add to Yuki's point regarding Duck Lake, Delta is again Fabric is what Fabric has adopted. Then there is an Iceberg which can also be read within Fabric, because Fabric has something called as an X-table converter, which means that when you save the data, even in other formats like Iceberg, it automatically translates that format into Delta tables, and then you are able to read that data as if it is a Delta table. Duck Lake is a recent announcement. Fabric doesn't necessarily support in its catalog Duck Lake, but it's an interesting development and just goes to show that this space, even after so many years, is still evolving. And like what Yuki said, maybe in a couple of years, we'll probably see the industry maybe converge to a point where we can all stop the storage wars and catalog wars and get back to doing the actual data engineering work. We have a question from Sanchez. Do you use separate environments for Polars and DuckDB? So I think this question is if I'm understanding correctly, if the question is different, please feel free to chime in or raise your hand. But the question is, when you create the environments within Fabric, do you create separate Fabric environments for Polars and DuckDB? Yuki?
Yeah, probably not. And if I were to use like any of these tools in production pipelines, I would stick to one of them, unless if it's like very necessary, so that we can just keep consistency and standards across the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hamid has a question. The benchmarks compare overall read plus write performance, if I understand correctly. But how do we? But do we know how read and write in isolation in these frameworks? So whether it is better in read compared to Spark, and is it better in write compared to Spark, or just overall you would expect to see performance improvement in general?
Yeah, so in my example, I put everything in one function, but you can just separate them from like reading, transformation to writing. So that way you can just benchmark different portions of your code, and that way you'll be able to benchmark your portions of your code.
Okay. I think we have a hand up. Piyush, do you unmute yourself?
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks, Yuki. And there's like I had a general question. So, like in our industry, like we have like a lot of like most of the situations involve a lot of white tables. So the tables might have like 10,000 columns, 100,000 columns, and we observe that Spark doesn't work very well with those white tables. So, like, are you guys like aware of any other framework that is like more adept to handle white tables? And yeah,
I don't know that specifically, honestly, and that's a really good question.
okay, thank you.
So Yuki, sorry, I'm going to ask this quick question. You mentioned about DuckDB is more on the SQL syntax, which is really opened my eyes all of a sudden, because I've been historically been in a deep in need in SQL. Have you done any benchmark, like, if you use well, I'm talking purely from the Fabric frame point of view, like you have a SQL endpoint, you can run your T-SQL queries there. And of course, you have a Spark SQL. Of course, Spark will take time even to start and whatsoever. But if you want to use two questions like DuckDB and T-SQL, do you have any comparison around those? Second question of this is like, is it like straightforward, like T-SQL knowledge you can bring into DuckDB, or there is some other syntax changes you need to make, or it's just actually, if you know SQL, you just use that SQL and write in DuckDB and it would work?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about your first question, but to answer your second question, you cannot port over the exact T-SQL syntax or SQL code into DuckDB. DuckDB has its DuckDB syntax, so you will need to convert if you have T-SQL scripts into DuckDB SQL. Yes. And what was your first question? Sorry.
The first question was, have you done any comparison if you run T-SQL versus SQL in DuckDB? Of course, DuckDB is a SQL base. So any benchmark between those two?
No, I haven't done that. No, yeah, that's short answer is no.
Okay, so probably that's something. Sorry, how big of that conversion you need to know, or what is the learning curve if you're coming from T-SQL background and want to use DuckDB? And is it like there's 70% similar or 50% similar, or like it's like really you have to rethink everything, or uh, what are your thoughts on that, or have any rough idea about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like exact percentage that's like overlapped between DuckDB and T-SQL, but it's basically like going from T-SQL to maybe Postgres or a BigQuery, Snowflake, something like that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So, if I may chime in, so there are some transpilers that are available, and obviously with AI, you know it's much easier than what it used to be. But there are some transpilers that are available where you can stick in your code, T-SQL code, and then it can convert to ANSI SQL or any other SQL dialect, and then back and forth as well. In Just based on my personal experience that I've worked with, it is fairly close. So the ideas are still the same. There are some really cool and maybe I would call innovative approaches within DuckDB, which makes certain things much easier, like pivoting or unnesting and some other things, which are much easier to do with, SQL Glot. There you go. Perfect. Yeah, that's one of those. That's much easier to do with DuckDB. And that's purely because DuckDB is, you can use it in Python. So it has that Pythonish kind of a feel to it, and it's uh, more modern way of, I guess, doing things. But if you're coming from a T-SQL background, in general, it's not much of a heavy lift, in my opinion. Polars, on the other side, is a more Pythonic framework and Pythonic way of doing things. And Yuki, correct me if I'm wrong, but Polars you can also do SQL. Not as popular, but I don't know if it is very if it is recommended or not recommended, and if there are any disadvantages and limitations to doing that. But I know in Polars as well, you can do pl.sql and stuff like that and convert it, but it's more Pythonic way of doing things, which is what I'm more used to. And then for the T-SQL, because the two use the completely different engines within Fabric, and this is particularly just in Fabric itself. In Fabric, let's say if you are using a data warehouse, it's going to use the data warehouse compute, which is very, let's say, optimized for a T-SQL. The optimizations are driven for T-SQL, and the optimizations or the plans that are created are for T-SQL. So it's that. And then when you are comparing that with DuckDB, where you're using the Spark engine basically, or the Python engine, so the two are completely different. And to have it will be actually hard to do a direct comparison between the two by controlling the variables. But Mim, who will be one of our speakers in the future sessions, he has done a ton of comparisons in general. So depending on, I guess, the use cases, depending what you're doing, you may get different results. Yeah.
Awesome. I think I have to test that because I'm at the crossroad of changing something for one of my customer, and we are now kind of in a place like, hey, they have good T-SQL bench, but at the same time they don't want to limit themselves to, because Fabric offers quite a lot, right? So the one thing they want, okay, you know what, the good thing about them is they don't want limit themselves only T-SQL because they know T-SQL, but if they can get benefit from the other data engineering tools available within Fabric with less, learning from scratch. So as soon as the Yuki said DuckDB with the SQL and that kind of stuff, I'm just like, okay, it's like a how they can benefit, or if because when you are at that stage, when you are trying to start something new, and within the Fabric now there's a lot more options available, they really want to compare everything and ready to invest into the knowledge of the people. If one tool overall has a better performance, can do things faster and save some money, right? So that's why that question it came up. And I guess there's a little bit more work need to get done in terms of, because very few people I see, they want to go outside what they know, outside that boundary. But this is one of my clients, they really like, okay, let's explore. If we have 4 tools available, take some time and learn what is available and see what long term they can use that, or maybe mix of those things, but they want to explore. But anyhow, this is,
Yeah.
it's
I guess
good
one
to hear.
thing to keep in mind, and again, this is purely for Fabric only, right? So one thing to keep in mind when you are exploring and choosing one framework over the other is, one, the maturity, and then two, the support, right? T-SQL has been around for many, many, many years, right? So, and then two, if something goes wrong in Fabric, if something doesn't work, and you need to create the ticket, you can create a ticket if it is T-SQL or a warehouse or Spark. If something goes wrong, doesn't work for whatever reason, because the Fabric runtime doesn't allow, or there is a clash, dependency clash, or something with Polars and DuckDB, you will not be able to create a ticket for that, because they'll be like, it's a open source tool that you're using and you're on your own. So some different aspects to that. I would say, just in my personal opinion and in my personal testing, I think you'll be surprised to see how well DuckDB and Polars work, even for fairly large data sets. Companies and users call their data sets very large, but we're not talking about terabytes of data. Nobody has terabytes of data, and it's at that scale where you start to look for very mature and very complicated solutions. Even in Fabric, where we have Spark, and the last speaker we had who talked about Spark and native execution engine, the gap between these tools, the Python-only tools and Spark, is closing a lot. But when you're talking about really small workloads, so I'll give you my example where I'm working with clients, and maybe they're pulling an Excel sheet, or they're calling some APIs and getting some data, where you're talking about maybe hundreds of rows, or thousands of rows, 10,000, or maybe a million rows, that Spark overhead may not be justifiable. And I see that day to day in what I do, where you are able to save all those capacity units just by using DuckDB and Polars. It's only when you want to create more mature and future-proof solution, that's when you want to start looking at and considering Spark, data warehouse, and all the options. So it is well supported. It is, so because it is Fabric. Okay, we have a hand up by Kufre. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sandeep. Please, I'm so sorry. I'm not really familiar with most of the terms being discussed here, because I'm not the data engineer. I have a background in machine learning developments and data analytics. So my question, it goes this way. Sometimes when I try to apply for a job, I realize that the requirements suggest that I should have the knowledge of ETL and data pipeline development. So I was wondering, my first question goes this way, like as a data analyst or ML developer, why do I need the knowledge of data pipeline development? That's one. And then two, how can I learn and master how to develop pipeline, a data pipeline? So those are the two questions I have for now.
Yeah, great question. Yuki, do you want to share your experience?
Yeah, so I guess to learn fast, you just work on projects, and with like ChatGPT, Claude, like those AI tools, like it's really easy to throw questions at AI models, and then you get really great answers that really help you learn concepts that you're struggling to learn about. New tools, existing tools, things like that. AI tools are very good at like summarizing and giving you a snippet of what its tool means and what it does and things like that. So using AI tools, it really help and accelerate your learning a lot. And then just work on projects to, I guess, deepen those understandings.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I still want to follow up on that. The challenge I have spotted is that most of these bootcamp platforms, when you join them, they give you a kind of a general idea of what you're supposed to know. For instance, as a data engineer, but in the industry, you will be expected to work on real life projects, real life automation. So I sometimes I find it difficult to appreciate the knowledge I acquire from bootcamp courses. For instance, if you want to look at CI and CD development, you go on Udemy, you go on Coursera, they tell you, they demonstrate what it's all about, but that doesn't mean that you can do it. To do it, you need to be in an environment where you lay your hands on those equipment and then see how you can apply those tools to solve the real life problems. So that's the issue I have now, and I would like to know if there is any course like any course you offer that can guide someone, that can take someone on a step by step a procedure on how to develop a pipeline, data pipeline. And another thing I would like to appreciate is that if I can be able to learn how to develop a pipeline to automate the process of data analytics from querying database to dashboard development and then to real-time automation. I don't know if that's possible with pipeline development.
Yeah, I would like to add here. I think just your question is great, right? What I found is technology is depending on what tooling is available to you. Let's say you're working in an organization, you come within a background in certain technology, but they don't allow to use that technology, or it's not part of their tooling set. I think the most important question which I come across, or in these kind of situations, the projects I'm doing all over the place, is first of all to understand how I want my data to be, in what shape and all this stuff. I think tooling comes really late in the picture. How to get there, right, is I think that is the easiest part, to be very honest. What is the toughest part I found is, hey, here is my raw data somewhere sitting. I don't know where it is, right? And I want start from raw data from this shape to this shape. That's the first thing. What that final stage of the shape is. What's the volume of the data? How often it need to be get done? That's the first thing. I think identifying the final shape is very, very important. Now go back to, okay, what tooling they allow. Is it like they tell you, like, do whatever you want to do? Then you go with what you are best at, right? Or what if somebody goes with the fabric today, because I'm going to talk through the fabric point of view. It has changed a lot for what my client used to do historically, right? I'm just talked about a project where I need to look into DuckDB and other things where the T-SQL is as well available. The point is, I think What you said, I would not worry too much about learning technology as such, because giving all these Copilot and AI is available these days, they can really get you to the point where it is. I'm going to give you a real simple example here. A very recent project I did on the NetSuite, pulling data from NetSuite, bringing into Fabric. And I have no idea how NetSuite stores the data, how it, its API is going to give me, what tooling I'm going to use it to get the better performance and the cheaper. The effort which went into is to understand what is available from that suite, what shape data it's going to give me, what my final output is going to look like. Once I figured out the start and end point, the rest of the pieces were very easy to put together, in my opinion. I think that is easy part if you ask me. So I don't think I will worry too much about technology and tool and all this stuff. I think it's more about uh, getting from point A to the final point is the most important. I think tooling is the easy part these days. I found it very easy. I'm not sure what other things about it.
Yeah, well said, Perv. And just the fact that you're asking these questions, you're attending, going out of your way to attend a session, which means that you're educating yourself. And so these things, they come with experience. The more you learn, more you explore, the more you will understand and appreciate different tools, technologies, methodologies. So keep doing that, I guess, and hopefully you can attend our future sessions as well. So happy to know that you're on that path. Any other questions we have here? Feel free to unmute or raise your hand or ask it in the chat. Otherwise, thank you, Yuki. Really appreciate it. It was a great session. We can see that in the chat itself that everybody loved it. Thank you for doing that. And then, Perv, if you want to share your screen and if we want to do the raffle.
Do you want me to? Do we have anything on my screen to share on Raffle?
Okay, give me 1 minute.
You have probably you want to share yours.
Yeah. Okay, give me
Thanks,
1 minute to pull that
don't
up. And in the meantime, if you have any further questions, just let us know.
Yeah, I just want to extend on Kufri's, like, so his is a very generic question. I'm not sure. Yeah, don't block yourself into any technology and all this stuff. Like, attend as many sessions and then learn from others and then just grow into it. Like 10 years ago, I had no idea about what the DAX is. And when the Power BI came, now I pretty feel good about it. Like I learned joining community events and see what other people are doing it and try to uh, replicate that. But I think the biggest learning path comes when you have a challenge in front of you. I found I can't learn anything if I don't have to solve a problem. If they put me in a box, hey, this is what we need to do, and this is the only tools available around you, that's the best way you learn, because you don't have the options around that. If you don't have a project to do, it's very, very hard to experiment. What is gonna, you might understand the syntax and all the stuff, but that's pretty much it. And then you forget very quickly until you have, I don't know if anybody else want to share their experience around that.
And I think Fabric is a good solution for this as well, right? Because in case of Fabric, you have all the tools necessary to be able to create everything you need. So maybe that's what you're looking for. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, Perv, do you see my screen?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, let's just confirm we have everyone. So I have Aurora, Christopher, Jin, Kiku, Harry, Ingo, James, Jose, Julian, Kufre, Mason, Mehrdad, Mira, Monica, Piyush, Emmanuel, Satish, Stephen, and Wei. Is there anyone else that I'm missing?
You're missing me.
No, you don't get anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll the dice here. I'm gonna go and number 2, Christopher.
Yay,
Christopher, if you are still here. Yeah, Christoph rather. Can you hear us, Christoph?
I might have gone.
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, there you go. Perfect. Excellent. So congratulations, Christoph. We will be in touch. Can you please connect with us on LinkedIn, either me or Per, and we'll set you up with selecting one of the Power BI Fabric books from Pact. Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Yuki. Thanks for spending your Friday evening with us. I'm going to have my beer and enjoy the rest of the weekend. So take care, guys.
Yeah, everyone enjoy the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Yuki, again.
Bye.
Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank
Yes,
you.
bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye,
Goodbye.
everybody.
Have a good weekend. Take care. Bye.